TUFF SHIFT. Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of TUFF SHIFT, the podcast where we unpack all that goes into surviving the job and living the dream. I am your host, Patrick Murtagh, and I need a margarita. Mama's thirsty. Mama needs a margarita. But first of all, I just want to make clear, it is none of your business what time it is when we're recording this episode. And it is even less of your business that we're recording just a few days after Cinco de Mayo, where I had enough margaritas for this fiscal quarter. But, I am feeling so tired and overwhelmed that so much is going on. That I guess I should start by telling you what's going on. So let me just start by saying, well, I got it. Well, I got it. Well, I got it. That's right. After months of agony and despair, I'm talking months, embarrassingly a long time, I finally got a new job. I got a new job at a brand new restaurant, and I won't be on the floor anymore. I will be behind the bar full time, my happy place. If I'm not on stage, put me behind a bar. Let me make drinks for you. Let me attack that server's well. And I couldn't be happier that it's finally happening because, all those shitty websites where we upload our resumes and we duplicate that information once we get matched with jobs, and then we get led to another portal to triplicate and then quadruplicate or whatever exponentially amount of times that we take the resume that has all the information you need and we regurgitate it into another portal for you. Like it's already there. You have my resume. You can look at it, but I have to fill it out in your portal that you're not going to look at anyway. You're not going to look at anyway. And then you're going to ask me these series of questions and these, pre-screeners and all this for really like barely any bites. And the bites that I got were like barely consensual. So all for naught. I'm going to just say it. It was a complete waste of time and energy. And for the most part, it's one of the things about this industry that I really despise. It's really cruel the way we treat our talent pool. It's really cruel and unfair, the hoops you make people jump through just to get a job, just to get an interview when you're not interested. It's like gay dating. It's like, can I tell you, if you are not a gay man and you don't understand, it is, oh my God, like, why did we match? Why did we match on Hinge? Why did we match on Tinder? Why do we have a conversation on Grindr and Scruff? And well, I know there's a lot of more stuff now that I'm glad I'm not in this game anymore. But why are we matching on all these different things to never meet up, to never go past, hi, how are you? And that's how I feel it is looking for a job. And funny enough, this new job that I got was not from any one of those websites. It was not from any one of those countless applications and questions I answered and submitted. It was the old-fashioned way that we talked about a few weeks ago, how we did it in New York, which was pounding the pavement and word of mouth. A dear friend of mine, a newer friend of mine who I worked this summer with at the place that I'm escaping, started at the place that I'm going to, and she reached out and she's like, hey, we're looking for bartenders and I know you need a new job. And so I went in, I submitted my resume, went and spoke with them, had my first interview. And let me tell you it was like almost as fulfilling as a callback or booking a gig, because I had spent so many months with my nearly 20 years of experience not getting any bites. I was questioning, like, am I a bad candidate for these places? Am I not as good as I think no, I am as good as I think I am. It's just how these things work. And I guess, saying all that time spent on those portals was, a waste of time. whatever it was, at least I didn't get sucked into one of those restaurants that wasn't replying. At least I got to this one he had a list of questions that, it's a corporate restaurant, not big corporate, not like, Cheesecake Factory to where you have to sell your soul, but like corporate enough to where there's certain steps of the interview process, which I have mixed feelings about, but I understand why it exists. But pretty much we naturally got through the list of those questions just by our conversation. And oh my God, did I sell myself to them? And I went back for a second interview with Chef, and she is phenomenal. Really talented chef. Really enjoyed talking to her. Really seeing her as a grounded chef who is talented, who is not yelling or being a dick to any employees, who really is in it. Though obviously she is very skilled and an artist in that, and more studied than I am. We are still very much all a team, and it was nice to kind of get that sensation because this is, like I said, just a survival job, but that doesn't mean that I have to be barely surviving. That doesn't mean any of you have to be barely surviving. We can do this, and we can have fun, and you can be respected in the process. So all that to say, I am overwhelmed because though this is a much better place for me and a much better fit, there is a lot of testing. Like I have not tested like this since don't make a testing joke. I have not tested like this since I was working at Cook Shop, or even the Smith. Like really intense. But this is like there's tests every training, and there's 8 trainings. So I went for my first official training, and the amount of information I have to have memorized within the next 48 hours is crazy. So there's actually going to be no margaritas for the next 2 weeks. I need all the gray space I can muster to get through these tests. And a lot of it is things that you already know, that you can, intuit, but they want it a certain way. So I'm going to be busy doing that. I'm happy for that. But, as funny as the universe is, it also comes with, like, I have to now leave my restaurants. I have to finish my shifts that I have and continue to make that money, because training money isn't great, obviously. And of course, this is when I get an onslaught of audition requests and music packages to learn. So I thankfully booked a few guests this week to get caught up and to be ahead of the game, which is going to be really great for the next couple of weeks when I'm adjusting to this new job and I don't have to worry about crafting episodes and this and that. So it's all within theme of this show, right? We're balancing trays and we're balancing auditions. Like we are making it happen. And proof is in the pudding that you can see there is no false advertisement in this podcast, and in really celebrating the hard work that not just me, that so many of us do in so many of these major cities, and so many of the careers we're performing outside of here. And before anybody asks, I'm not going to tell you the name of the restaurant. And that's not because it's a conflict of interest, because I'm on a show that, talks shop and unpacks some sometimes uncomfortable things about working in restaurants, and I don't want to get in trouble. It's not because of that. Maybe a little bit. But really, the main reason I'm not going to tell you where I'm working, either on here or via text or anywhere, is because I don't want you to come visit me at work. I know that sounds weird, and people, it's like one of those things where people ask, like, how are auditions going? And they think they're like, oh, I want to show you I'm interested in your life. Don't ask me how auditions are. Please don't. I'll let you know as soon as I have an update. I promise, because I have to keep my mental game so clean and so balanced to really not be broken down by the amount of times that we get no in this performing industry, by the amount of times that it's similar to these job portals where it's like, I did all this work and you didn't even email me. But I'm willing to sacrifice it for this career. And I appreciate you asking me about how auditions are going and the intention. But let's just talk about other things. Let's talk about like songs, maybe, and this could work for your other actor friends and singer friends in life. Ask them like what songs they're working on, what kind of cool things, like, but auditions is a little sensitive because sometimes it's not as fun as it can be. and it's a little draining. We just need to keep ourselves positive and going. So let's talk about anything other than auditions. Let's talk about, have you seen this show? What do you think about this? Have you learned this? Stuff like that. That's all fun. Right. And same thing with my survival job. We don't need to talk about work and how's work going? How's your new restaurant? It's work. Do you want to talk about your office job, Linda? No, you want to talk about the gardening you're doing on the weekend. You want to talk about the hikes you took. Like, we don't need to talk about this. And you really, I mean, if I came to your work and sat down at your desk and watched you typing away and answering emails and filing and rolling your eyes at your boss, like, it's not that fun, right? And there's this overwhelming feeling of having to take care of you. And I get really overwhelmed and neurotic about, are you having a good time? Am I dropping the ball? But also, like, I have things to do. I'm not here to entertain. And I know it's like, oh, I want to see you at work, but like, why can't we get a drink? It's hard enough to see each other regularly. Why do you want to see me on a one-sided offering where, like, you're there to have fun and have a drink, and I'm buried in tickets and turning out drinks and cutting limes? And does this sound weird to anyone? Am I wrong? Please feel free to answer in any of the comments if I'm overreacting. But like, I don't want to have to worry about how you're feeling or embarrassed the fact that you're seeing me sweat and the fact that I have to answer the boss. And it spreads my focus too thin. It divides it too much. And like, now I'll come in when it's slow. Be like, well, no, because I have stuff to, even when it's slow, I got to prepare myself for when it's busy. And then when it's busy, I don't want to have to worry about, are you okay? Do you need another drink? And you kind of become like that customer who learns my name, and you'll say my name because you know it because we're friends. And then you'll like want to jump the line. It's like, I can't do that. And then it's like, does this place offer discounts? And then I feel guilty, like, about, can I get you free stuff? Can I not get you free stuff? And then the awkwardness around tipping your friends, like, just don't do it, please. I have enough to deal with at work. Let's go get a drink. Let's go get tacos and margaritas. Like, that would be so much more fun, don't you think? Don't you think? I think so. But let me tell you where you can't. I told you my brain is fried. Let me tell you where you can visit me. You can visit me when I book a show. You're always asking, oh, when are you going to do another show? When are you bringing your show to LA? When are you coming back to New York? When are you coming back to San Francisco? Well, when I do, buy tickets. Visit me at that work. When I book a regional theater gig, visit me there. Oh my God, and tag me on social media and let those theater companies know that you're there to see Shawnee Boy shine and sing high notes. Like, visit me in my bookings. Visit me and all your performer friends on their social media pages when they're sharing content, when I'm sharing about this podcast. Visit me there. Give a like and a comment like, oh my God, Sean, you are so funny. I would love to visit you at work, but I understand and respect your boundaries and can't wait to see you at whatever theater in LA. Visit me there. All right. Okay. Maybe I'm just becoming a grumpy old Doña. Doña Shani's scolding you again, but maybe that's just the truth. And if you agree with me, let me know. If you don't, keep that to yourself. Speaking of shows, I want to go ahead and take another moment to promote and talk about my dear friend, Richard Skipper, who is also a friend of the podcast. He is a cabaret legend and icon. He's been doing this forever, and he's returning to the Laurie Beachman Theater, the recently renovated and reopened Laurie Beachman Theater, named after the Broadway icon and legend Laurie Beachman, which is a theater in the basement of the recently renovated and reopened West Bank Cafe on 42nd Street. It is an institution for people pre-show, post-show, actors. It is the drinks are amazing, the food is amazing, the shows, the lineups they have is amazing, and Richard Skipper is going to be there on May 30th at 7:30, and you can go to thebeachman.com, and Beachman is BEECHMAN.com to get your tickets, and make sure to use discount code RSC25 ! The RSC is for Richard Skipper Celebrates, who you can check out on YouTube and go see a show. This is going to be a fun, interactive show. You get there and you scan a QR code and you can enter a question for Richard for all the many different areas of his life, his performing life. questions about, his time with Carol Channing, so many things. Google him if you're kind of want to get a little more familiar so you can dive deeper. And he's going to answer those questions live on stage. He is so charming. And the show just brings you back to another time. Anytime he's on stage, it's going to be a good night. So make sure to get those tickets. And speaking of margaritas, oh, give me one margarita. I just want to give a shout out to Rita's in Hell's Kitchen. Now, Rita's was my final destination in New York City. I have a lot of spaces I love, but Rita's became my place. It is, and it's Rita's like apostrophe Ritas, like margaritas, but Rita's, not Rita's as in Rita's Taco Shop. And it is phenomenal. I recently waited on a flight attendant who's based in New York, and she was out here in LA. And I was like, oh, New York, blah, 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 blah. And I get my fake New Yorker. Like, oh, I was there. I'm a New Yorker. I'm from California. I just lived there for a long time. And we were talking, and she's like, what do you miss about New York? And I was like, oh my God, I miss Rita's. They're margaritas. And she couldn't believe it. She's like, I thought, you get better ones in California. And maybe I think we've moved past that. I know it's always like you can't get good Mexican food in New York, and everyone likes to tell themselves that. Clearly, California has amazing cuisine, and we have a climate to grow everything we need for the freshest and most amazing Mexican food. But that doesn't mean New York is for chumps, right? Like, it's 2025. You can flash freeze stuff. You can get things delivered. Like, New York has come up. It's not the 1980s, all right? And the sauces at Rita's are phenomenal. The Brussels sprout nachos. I'm a carnivore, but let me tell you, those Brussels sprout nachos are amazing. But the margaritas, 100% lime juice, 100% agave, 100% agave tequila. Recently, I've had so many friends going to New York, and my advice is to stop by. Yeah, the Brooklyn Bridge will be there. Yeah, the Empire State Building. Yeah, the High Line. Got it. But you know what? You need to go to Rita's, and you do need to go to Rita's. Say hello to everyone and let them know a large Marge sent you. I wait for the day when more than one person gets that reference. Anyways, I've rambled on enough. You can tell I'm going through ingredients in my head and measurements for the test I have to take tomorrow. So let's forget about my troubles and worry, and let's move on to today's guest, who is someone that I have been following on social media for quite a while now, and I am just obsessed with his content. He keeps it professional. He has like all his goings on in his career. He keeps it funny to kind of lighten the mood, and a few times a little thirsty, because as a gay man, we got to do that sometimes. You need to up the likes, and he manages it so well. I'm just impressed with his entire online media presence, and I can't wait to get to know him in person, although virtually. He's a classically trained dancer turned triple threat, turned TV and film regular, turned comedian, turned social media maven. As I mentioned, he does it all, and so well. He has been nominated for an LA Ovation Award and has been seen on stages throughout the LA area in shows like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, Carousel. Oh my God, Dreamgirls. We're talking about Dreamgirls, and it's only been 2 weeks since we talked about Dreamgirls. We're talking about Dreamgirls. You're in town, and he's performed in New York City in Music Man and Broadway dances with the legendary Karen Ziemba. He's been on Family Business and The Con on TV, and he was named among the 10 national emerging comics by the Laugh Factory here in LA. He's performed at Caroline's in New York City and opened for the likes of Janine Garofalo and Wanda Sykes. Now that is quite a resume, and I can't wait to unpack as much of it as we can with the phenomenally talented Jamie Pierce.
I am exhausted by that bio. I didn't realize I had done so much. No wonder I'm so tired.
Right? But you look so refreshed. It is one of my joys in doing the show is clicking the show button to bring you on and seeing guests' reactions to me singing their praises. Because we beat ourselves up as performers. It is so natural, like, oh, I missed that turnout, or I don't know, I'm not a dancer. I don't know if you miss a turnout, but all the ways
Yeah.
we berate ourselves. And then when people like sing our praises back to us, and not even just praises, like list of accomplishments, it's something we need to hear. And so I'm glad you heard it today for
I
whatever
would like
it
to,
serves you for this week.
I want to hire someone to just read my bio to me every day, or at
You
least
can
once a week.
You can get one of those like digital frames, those aura frames, and I'll send you a clip of
Great idea.
this, and they'll just like
Great
talk
idea.
at you like Jamie Pierce. So welcome to the show. Like I
Congrats
mentioned,
on the new job.
oh, thank you
That's
so
amazing.
much. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of testing, and once I'm
Mm.
on the other side of it, it's just I'm 105 years old. I have so much up in this cloud, and it's just like like just all these sauces, and it's and thankfully, I mean not anything about this place, but all chefs now are like Mediterranean, California cuisine. So it's
Mhm.
like if you know what a duca spice is, if you know what ras al hanout is, like everyone uses it. So it's like okay, so that's a lot easier. It's just about in which dish. So thank
Yes,
you
sure.
very much. And
And it's good that you take it so seriously, though, like that you actually prepare as though it were, analyzing a script.
I mean, it is for me. Like I really enjoy when I can connect. I know I talk a lot of shit about customers on here, but when I can actually connect, like when someone's good and worth connecting with, and not like demanding it or expecting it, and making you jump through hoops. Like when I can really
Right.
talk about like a sauce, it's just it's fun. I love cooking. I come from a big family, a big lots of cultures. Obviously, my Latin side has a little more flavor than my Irish side as far as cooking
Mhm.
goes, but I really enjoy the art of cooking, and which is why bartending for me is such a wonderful experience. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, and for whatever it's worth, and however that helps me out in the career that I'm actively pursuing. But
totally.
we're not here. This is not your show. I'm here to talk
Wait, I
about
have one
you.
more question for you, though.
Don't you?
Question.
You got it.
I know you're supposed to interview me, but you said you worked at the Smith and Cook Shop, right, in
I
New York?
did. Yeah,
Those were two of my favorite places. I would go there all the time. Maybe you served me.
I probably did. When were you in New York?
I had two phases in New York. I was there in the early aughts, and then I moved back in 2010 and was there until like 2016.
Yeah, I was at Cook Shop from 2012 to 2015, and
Mm,
then I was at the Smith in 2016. So if you went to Cook Shop when we were wearing blue gingham, I definitely probably
definitely. Yes.
waited on you when we talked about our seasonal, sustainable, localized menu. But the food is great, and the brunches are nuts at Cook Shop.
So, oh,
I
yes.
love
I,
that
I,
place.
I I loved both those places.
Yeah,
So,
it's really great. The Smith was intense because that's where I was
mm,
bartending, and they have like 25 signature cocktails, and it's like
ooh,
we've talked about enough on this show, but that was a lot. Like you really just had it was motor memory. Like you had a well in front of you and then a well behind you, and you just had to know where things were. It was pretty crazy.
wild.
But let's talk about you. I want to
Okay,
know,
let's do it.
Jamie Pierce. Let's rip the Band-Aid off, and
Okay.
tell me, what was your gateway job into this industry?
The industry of show business or the industry of
The
hospitality?
hospitality.
So, when I was in high school slash college, like the transitional summer, I grew up in Utah, Salt Lake City, and I went to college at the University of Utah. And the big hangout place was TGI Fridays. That was just where everybody went, all the college kids. And I was there all the time. And I got to know the staff and the managers and had so much fun that I don't remember if they suggested or I suggested. I was like, I should come work here. I'm here all the time. Like, I'll just join the force. And so I got a job as a host, and I was very disappointed to learn that, because remember, TGI Fridays had the flare
All the
back in the
flair.
day with the buttons, but the hosts don't get to wear flare, sadly. They just wear like a sensible polo. So that was disappointing, but
Yeah.
I really loved just being there, and it had a really fun kind of party atmosphere. It was very family oriented. I didn't love that part. Um, but I was a terrible host. Terrible.
Oh, okay. Well, let's unpack a little bit of that. What was it about the being family oriented? Like just the fact that there was too many goddamn children?
Yes, and like the high chairs and the coloring mats and like the mess that they would leave, and just the demands. They seem to always have like increased demands, which makes sense. But it was a lift, and the servers never loved it because the kids don't drink, right? So they want adult heavy drinkers is who they want sitting at their
Yeah.
table, and so kids kind of I think take away some of the revenue. So I think that's why.
Yeah, I mean, and it still happens. The hostess will say like, "Oh, well, you have a 12 top coming," which is like, "Great, autograt." And then it's like eight children. Like,
Mhm.
no, that's a five top at best because it's going to be
Yeah.
like, "Can I get how many butter pastas and Shirley Temples?" Like, you can't pay rent on that. And it is true. Like, parents expect you to take the burden of their children off of them. Um,
Yes.
and even in the place I hope I'm not speaking too soon. The place that I'm starting at now, they have like a little bit in their training about, making sure to connect with kids to allow the parents time to settle in. And I've been a nanny and I've grown up around children. Like some children don't want the server looking at them because like then that will set them off because they want mom and dad. And also like, I'm not the nanny here. Like it's not
Right.
my job to take care of
Right.
your children. And it's like, you don't have bananas for kids. You don't have this. And like I work at places that do not have coloring books for a reason. And I
Mm-hmm.
work at places
Hmm.
that don't. And it's not that I'm anti-child. Like children do need to learn how to behave in a restaurant. Not on my dime. Not where I'm working. Those places exist, and that's perfectly fine. And you can bring your child to any restaurant, but you still got to be in charge. And you have to like same thing with when people bring dogs, which is like the place that I'm leaving has it's 85% patio. It is giant outside, and they bring their dogs. And like, yes, we have a limited number of dog bowls, but why don't you? Why do you bring your dog out in 80-degree weather to sit outside in the sun and you don't have
Yeah.
a collapsible thing? Like you need to for dogs and children, you need to have a bag of goodies for them and distract them. And
Absolutely.
it's so I'm glad that you not glad that you feel that way, but I'm glad to not be the only one to have that exact
I
same.
don't I don't take our dog to the restaurants because it's no fun for her. Like she's just what does she just sit there? She can't eat any of the food. You're right, it's hot, there's people, there's noise, there's children running
It's
around. Like,
it's too much. And I've noticed
yes,
this in
let's just stay
LA
home and
way more than I've seen it in New York, which is just like people in LA bring their dogs
everywhere.
inside
Yeah.
and it's like and they'll like have like the smallest dogs are usually the yappiest and the biggest dogs are usually the most docile. But like when it's that large dog, docile dog, it's like great, it's sweet and calm, but it's taking up the aisle. And that people
Right.
seem to be unaware, just like their children running around. What was the other thing you said about what you didn't like about it? Like family oriented and
Well, it could get really rowdy there,
yeah,
because it's kind of like fun time Fridays. Um, and the atmosphere was not, peaceful fine dining,
yeah.
which can be fun, but it also can wear you down.
Yeah, it's a lot of ranch, sides of ranch. It's a lot of
Yes.
sides of ranch.
A lot of sides of ranch. Wait, speaking of my dog, I have to let her in. She's
Oh
asking me.
God, yes, please. We want to say hi.
My daughter. She's my biological daughter. I gave birth to her.
And she's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're very proud.
Now, the next question that is always the same. Usually, this happens. There's a bit of a tangent between the two questions, which is, how it should be. Is there a tough shift in your tenure as host in any place in the restaurant that just sticks out with a bad interaction with a guest, a bad interaction with a boss, an influx of school children going to a matinee that just like sticks in your head and you're like, oh my fucking God, I'm glad this day is over.
Oh, yes. Well, as I mentioned, I'm a terrible host, which we can talk about that more. But in fact, I never graduated to server because I was so bad as a host that they never promoted me beyond that. Even though I did go on and I was a host in New York too. But at Fridays. And keep in mind, this was like 25 years ago in Utah, but there was another employee there. I don't think we had ever dated or anything. We were kind of flirty, we're kind of into each other. And one night over by the bus station, which was kind of out of the way. I mean, we weren't like in the middle of the floor or anything. We were talking, and I don't remember if we were like, if our hands touched or we were just talking really close, like nothing overt at all. But apparently a guest saw us semi-intimate and complained and said, I don't want to see this at my restaurant, when I go out to dinner. And we were reprimanded by the manager. And it was really upsetting because I would see that kind of thing with the men and women all the time,
Yeah.
lots of canoodling going on. And I was really disappointed because one of the things about that staff was that they were for Utah, they were very liberal and open-minded. And I think when the manager hears that something like that from a guest, I imagine it's a tough situation. Like, what do? Do you say, I'm sorry and deal with it? Do you just say, too bad, get over it? I don't know, especially in like early 2000s Utah. But that was an unfortunate incident that definitely sticks out in my mind.
Right, especially when things are so innocent. That's the whole thing when it's like, don't shove your lifestyle down my throat. I'm like,
Right.
well, listen, don't you yours mine either. Like I don't
Yeah.
need your beliefs down my throat. And it's like, I mean, for younger listeners, like the world was a completely different place 25 years ago, though there were some things that were like, and we assumed that was progressive. We assumed, and it was like, and there were things that we just were like, yeah, well, as a gay person, we're going to be limited in this and that and blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't make it any better or less hurtful,
Right.
especially when it's like something so innocent. And it's like,
Benign.
then
Yeah.
don't come here, Gladys. Like, go eat your hate chicken somewhere else. Like, get the hell out of here. Um, I'm
Exactly.
s- I'm so sorry. And now, if you're gay, go make out at every restaurant you can right now. Let's put Gladys in her place.
Please. Further
Which,
your cause.
well, and I'm at that place in life where it's not gay, straight, or anything. Like, I don't want to see people making out in public, uh, ever, because I'm just like an old lady now. I'm Gladys now, and
Oh,
I just
I'm
like
such a prude. I'm like, oh.
I'm like, put it away. And this is like, please, if the walls of Ninth Avenue Saloon could talk, like they'd be like, bitch, you're judging people, but like I was young and drunk, and now I'm
Different.
old and tired. I just,
Yes.
but let's unpack a little bit about you being a bad host and never graduating, because I always assumed, and this is what I tell people, if you have somebody who has you get any hint on their resume, their special skills, whatever, that they're a dancer, that they're classically trained, hire
Mm,
them, because
mm,
dancers get it done. They take
mm.
notes. They don't take it personally. And so I've always told people, like, if you see if a dancer comes in to apply, it doesn't matter how much skills they have, they will acquire the skills. And you are teaching me something new with this getting shy, I guess, at waiting tables, or
Uh, I mean, I think I have two qualities that don't make me well suited for that kind of work. One is
yeah.
that I'm very much a people pleaser. And I learned that when you're a host, you can either please the guest or you can please the server. You cannot
Oh,
please both
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because the guests always want to sit at a particular table. And it's usually, the best table and the only table. And, it's a two top and they want to sit at the four top. And the customer is always right, so you give them that. But then the server is like, well, now you just cut into my opportunity here for serving a table of four, because now it's a table of two. And I would have that conflict every time someone would come in. A two top would come in, and I'd be like, I don't know what to do. And that's the other quality that I have that is not good, is for this type of work, is that I am not good under pressure.
Mm,
And the type of pressure that performers are under, I think, is a different kind of pressure.
mm.
That's a prepared pressure. Like, you are
Yes.
prepared to do something. You know in advance what you're supposed to do, and now it's time to deliver. And I can do that. If I know what is expected of me and I've rehearsed, then here we go. But if
Yeah.
it's like make a decision on the spot kind of thing, No, I can't do it. I just melt. I become incapacitated. So
Yeah, and it is, you bring up, it is very hard to be a host. A lot of times it's like, oh, that's, the beginner's job. It's the easiest job in the restaurant. It's not. It is a very difficult job because, like you said, it's a double-edged sword, and you can either be, even if the server is your best friend, they
correct.
they come up and complain to you all the time
Hmm.
and be like, why'd you give me kids again? As if it was like your choice to give them kids.
Right.
And you have the
Exactly.
managers breathing down, like people come gather to like gossip and commune at the host stand. They also come to bitch, and then you're the first wave. Like, you were pretty much like the first no that the guest might potentially get. So like, you're
Hmm.
you're the smile, you're the welcome, but you're also
Hmm.
the first person. If that person's going to attack, it's going to be you
Yep. Yep.
first.
Exactly.
And that's just, I mean, yeah, I that's a lot. And when did you move to New York, and what kind of a place did you work at in New York?
Well, after college, and I worked at Fridays on and off kind of throughout college. And then when I graduated, I moved to New York. This was like 2003. And I got a job, kind of a similar situation. I had a place that I was hanging out at all the time. And I was like, hey, I have hosting experience. Do you want me to come? I think at the time it was just like pick up some shifts. Like I was a swing.
Yeah,
What's the word in the restaurant industry when you're like, you're not full time, but you like pop in when needed?
on call.
Sure.
Yeah, let's go
I'll
back.
think of it as I was the host swing. And it was a brewing company. It was like a brew pub, very similar like style menu to like a Fridays, but not a corporate thing. It was like a independently owned restaurant that's still there. Wonderful place called, at the time it was called West Side Brewing Company. Now it's
Mm.
called Amsterdam Ale House
Oh yeah,
on the Upper West Side. And it was such a fun place to work. One of the senior servers ended up eventually buying it and running it, and I think he still runs it today. Um, and I really had a lot of fun there as well with like the staff and everything. But I was still a terrible host, and I still was not good under pressure. And I also could never remember the table numbers.
mm.
And so to get around that, I decided that I would name them after famous people so I could remember which tables were which. Uh, I would usually it was like I would name them after like US presidents. I don't know why. But this was only a system that I knew. So I
Yeah,
would, someone I'd go to the server, I'd be like, I just sat them at Thomas Jefferson. And they'd be, where is that? I don't know what that means. And I was like, table three, because he was the third president. So not a good system if you don't fill other people in on it. But I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember that was table one. How am I supposed to remember that? It was, arbitrary. So I gave it an
yeah.
even more arbitrary system.
I think that it definitely keeps it fresh for
Hmm.
your coworkers. Now, do
Hmm.
you feel that like um, you're crumbling under pressure, or you're not dealing with pressure in this industry that way, uh, in the long run, helped you dodge a bullet? Because you were able to get out of hospitality easier, or do you still kind of secretly wish, like, yeah, it would have been nice to have waited tables?
No, I don't think that I would have been happy. I don't think the
Yeah,
guests would have been happy. I don't think the managers would have been happy. I don't think it would have been a good situation.
yeah,
Um, I, I, I really had such respect and admiration, and kind of part of me always wanted to be a server just because I thought that was a badge of honor.
yeah.
And what was so funny is that my very first co-star role on a TV show was playing a waiter. And I feel like I was the only actor in LA who had never actually been a waiter. And so I had to learn to do this role. And it was at a fine dining restaurant. I had to learn like the basics of serving fine dining, like, serve on the left, clear on the
You're
right,
on the
like
right.
that kind
Yeah,
of thing. And it was just doing that was so scary. I was convinced, and also in the scene, there was two like pretty big name actors. I was convinced I was going to drop the food on them because I have no experience in this. And so like
yeah.
that little tiny bit of pressure just reminded me how ill suited I would have been for that life.
But I did see it. I did. I've seen your actor reel, and you could have fooled me. You look pretty
Oh,
natural as the waiter in that.
well,
But
again, I can deliver as a performer, but luckily I was glad to know that there were multiple takes in case I did drop the tray onto the actors.
Exactly, and I'm glad you didn't. So
Mhm.
what was your way out of the restaurant world? Like, how did you finally leave? Like, what was your out as far as a new survival job or booking dream jobs? How did you get out of this lifestyle?
When I moved to LA the first time, because I've done the New York to LA cycle twice.
Hmm.
And the first time I left New York, I left this restaurant. And when I moved to LA, I luckily was in a situation where I was performing enough that I didn't need a survival job. And then when I moved back to New York, I actually left the business for a couple years and went back to school because I'd met my husband at the time, and he had a job. He actually worked for Danny Meyer,
Oh,
speaking of
wow, yeah.
hospitality. He comes from the hospitality world in like the operation side of things.
Hmm.
He's never been a server, but he's done a lot of operations for fine dining as well as for quick service. They call it now. They don't call it fast food. They call it quick service.
Quick service.
So like Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Um, and he was working, and I decided that I was going to take a break. So I went back to school, and I studied a non-artistic. I studied some sciences because I wanted to just like see what I could do. And so I took out loans, and that paid for life for a while.
Yeah.
And so that meant I also didn't have to have a survival job. And then eventually we both got to a place where we were working enough to support ourselves. And what's great is that he's got a steady income. So when I'm contributing, we're good. But when I'm not contributing, we're also going to be okay.
Yeah, you're gonna
Very
be
grateful for that.
exactly. Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. And is there anything, because I always like to say that not every shift can be a tough shift. Uh,
Mm.
what was the rewarding part for you about working in hospitality? What was something that you either learned or you looked forward or you're glad you have experienced?
I mean, I really love the camaraderie with the other staff and the friendships that I made, many of whom I'm still friends with to this day, from both places. And I think that is because you're like in the trenches, and
Yeah.
it's different than like a performing job where you're together for maybe like 6 weeks. I mean, if you're in a long run, like when I did Priscilla, I think we were 6 months. And so like that definitely bonds you. But I think being in a restaurant, that core group, you can stay together for a long time and really, really connect. So that is something that I treasure. I also, the few times where I was able to please both the guests and the servers, and I actually was able to perform under pressure, as rare as it was, when it did happen, I did feel pretty good about myself. Like, look, I can do other things.
Well, and there is a joy in it because it is hospitality, and there
Sure.
is again, I am more than happy to call bad behavior out, to make fun, to talk shit, but I'm also like I say I'm very fair. So I also like to talk about, good things. And the
Mhm.
reason we are in this the reason why I prefer bartending to waiting tables is because I feel like that's more of an art and I get a little show, a little more of me in that drink. And
Totally.
there is something about like when you get that opportunity for things to work. It's kind of like with casting, like they're not rooting against you when you walk in the room. They're rooting for you.
Mhm.
And the same thing for us. Like I'm not hoping that you send things back. I'm not hoping you have a bad time. I want
Mhm.
it's your anniversary. Fuck yeah. And you chose
Yeah.
us. Wonder. And
Make it
so when you
special.
when you can give them that table, that like that special table that was their first date or their this and that, like when you can accommodate, it does feel like even though it's just a survival job, it's not what I think I was put on this earth to do, you do feel a sense of pride, like, oh, I did that for somebody. Like it's you
Totally.
contributed to your community. And before we move on, I also want to acknowledge what you said about the difference between your castmates versus your teammates,
Mhm.
and it really goes back to what you said. I just want to connect the dots for myself in case anybody else listening is helpful because in this, let's say you're in a 6 month, let's say you're in a national tour, let's say you're on Broadway, and you're there for an extended amount of time, it's still a different type of thing where it's prepared. Like you're going through a prepared motion and you know what's happening even when things don't go according to plan. But when you're in the trenches, in the hospitality, when you have a shitty manager, when you both have served that customer that everyone hates, and when things go wrong and you've survived that together, that's a bond. It's like none of you could see that coming. And even like I have people that I did not enjoy working with,
Sure.
but outside of it, like I love them. And
Mm,
the fact that like
mhm.
it's almost like siblings. Like I can call them out for being dumb and unprepared every day, but do not dare use that tone of voice with my coworker.
Yes.
Like it's
Yes.
that
That's my
weird.
family.
That's my family, right? And yes, she's a dumb bitch, but she's my dumb bitch. Hey there, just checking in. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are, why not leave us a 5-star review and a comment or two wherever you're listening to this from? And don't forget to follow us on social media at TUFF SHIFT Podcast. That's TUFF Shift Podcast. Everywhere. Literally everywhere. And just a reminder, gratuity's not included, but tips are always welcome. And you can find our virtual tip jar at tuffshiftpodcast.com. That's TUFF Shift Podcast.com. All right, back to the show. I want to talk now about your life as a performer, because you have done so much. So similarly to our first question, can you kind of give us a little background about where little Jamie got started off in the world of performing and how that love and drive grew?
I mean, I do feel like I've lived a lot of lives and in show business, like constantly reinventing myself because you've got to pivot, and I'm old. So I've had, to go on an evolution because I started as a as a ballet dancer. That was my major in college was ballet, and I danced for a ballet company for a few years in college, and that's not something that you can do forever. And I also, even at the time, felt like I needed to, even in the world of dance, make a pivot. So that's why I started doing musical theater, was because I thought, well, there's probably a slightly longer shelf life to this versus being in a company. And so when I moved to New York, like within 2 months, I got my first job doing the Music Man, and I got my equity card, and I was like, oh, this is easy. This is great. You just show up in New York and you shake your ass and you get your equity card.
Yeah.
And I will say also, I did end up getting another show right after that, but then there was like a long stretch where nothing happened. And I think I learned very soon that you can't put all of your eggs in one basket, because when that basket dries up, then, to mix metaphors, then you're kind of screwed. So that's when I started to explore, like, well, acting and comedy, and I started doing stand up. And what I loved about doing stand up was that it was the complete opposite of being a chorus boy. When you're a chorus boy, you're expected to do the same thing as everybody else, not speak up or say anything at all, and kind of keep your voice to yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing stand up, you're alone on stage with a microphone, and it is all about your individuality and what makes you stand apart versus blending in the chorus. And so I'm glad that I discovered that, because that was a great antidote to doing theater. So I kind of did both of those things kind of back and forth for many, many years.
Which I find interesting, even though it is somewhat prepared, because stand-up comedy scares the idea of it scares the shit out of me, and the fact that you say you crumble under pressure, but then like, because stand-up comedy, yes, you prepare your routine, but audiences, one of my dearest friends who was also on this show, she had a very similar thing to where she transitioned out of musical theater into film and TV, and somewhere in between she managed to become a comedian, and that's been what she's been sustaining her as she between gigs and stuff. And so I, being the dutiful friend, have been to a lot of comedy shows, and
Yes.
not
Yeah.
every audience is the same. So like, how did you manage that to, like, let's say, even because like your joke could be funny, but the B&T people who are just like, sipping on their vodka Red Bulls, like, just, I mean, they bring it down sometimes. So how did you manage when it wasn't the ideal audience?
That's a great point about being under pressure and not being good under pressure, because that was the thing that I struggled with the most. And that's why I never did crowd work
Yeah.
or doing any, like, whenever I would get heckled and I had to like address it, like I would just panic, because if I had my prepared routine, we were fine. But if anything had to veer off, which you got to be ready for anything in those situations, I would not do well. And usually that would kind of be the end of me.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Like the variability in audiences and their variability in yourself, depending on the different contexts. Like you can even have a willing audience, but something about the room is throwing you off. It is not like doing theater where it's the same show every night. It's really, really, really in the moment. And I've never experienced anything with that much variability where I could have an incredible set where I would just kill and they would be rolling on the floor with laughter. And then the next night, I would do, even in like the same venue, and they would just it would just be crickets. And that got to me after a while. It's probably why I don't do stand up. I mean, the pandemic had something to do with that, because kind of live performing in general got put on ice during the
Yeah.
pandemic. But um, I was hosting a show here in Santa Monica, a monthly show. And, it was just unpredictable, and
Yeah.
that gets exhausting for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of these clubs, they do thrive off of foot traffic of tourists, and that's what a lot
Mm-hmm.
of comedy show. And again, but it's not like a Broadway audience or a theater audience, because they're going out of their way ahead of time to buy the
Right.
ticket. They want to be there. A lot of the times, people in audiences, they get tricked into being there, because you have the barker outside bringing people in, and
Mhm.
it's pretty crazy. But
Yeah.
I'm so amazed that you do it, and just it continues to add to the palette that you have to
Mm.
choose from. Is that, you have the dance background, you have how did you become a singer? Because I know, like, famously, like, a lot of dancers don't usually uh end up singing as part of their thing. A lot of dancers, like, are very
Mm.
afraid of singing. Do you just have a natural gift with that, or did you work really hard to develop your voice, which is beautiful?
Oh, thank you. I think that when you do come from a disciplined background like ballet, you understand that you can have an inherent gift at something or not, but the only way you're going to make something of it is to like work and
Hmm.
develop and train. And so I realized that if I was going to do musical theater, that I had to be able to do it all. I mean,
Yeah.
triple threat, as they say. So I studied very, very hard, and I worked with, I kind of, in fact, stopped training dance. Once I got to a point, I was, like 25, I was like, I don't need any more dance training. I've been doing this my whole life. Like, I know how to point my toe. I need to start developing other skills. So singing was one of the things that I really just buckled down and focused on developing. And that's a, that's a muscle. Like, my gosh, you've got to, as you know, like you can't, just like with dance, you got to keep up with it if you want
Yeah.
it to be able to perform at its peak.
Exactly. You got it's going to the gym. That's why I say, like, singers
Mm.
are people are like, why are you still in voice lessons? Why are you still doing this? Like, I have to sing every day. I have to
Right.
sing every day. And it's because it really is uh, an Olympic sport. Like, you are
Right.
doing crazy shit with your body, and you have to be like those athletes that stay on top of it. Um, Now, with all these things that you have been able to accomplish, and all the areas you've been able to not only express but further your talents, you have been working with some true legends and icons. I mentioned a few, Karen Ziemba, who,
Mm.
this is one of those things. We have a few. New York, like, you go to New York and you expect X, Y, and Z. These are the goals, and this is, the markers, and then there's the merit badges of the things that go along. Like, oh, I did a reading with Karen Ziemba. Oh, I did, like, all these things, and like, or not a reading, but I was, to my point is, like, in New York City, Karen Ziemba, like, really is one of the most impressive people to me, not just by what she's accomplished, but by the fact that she's still pounding pavement. And if you
Mm,
are an
mm.
actor in New York City and you have not attended a reading or a stage version of a show with Karen Zimba in it, you were never an actor in New York City, because that woman,
So true.
she's always working on something. And like,
I
what
know.
what did you get from working with these legends and these icons and seeing them, like, they're sticking with it, like Wanda Sykes, Karen Zimba, like Janine Garofalo, like working with all these people? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, Anne Reinking too. I was her
Oh,
assistant. She did her workshops at Broadway Dance Center. You know, what was so crazy about the Karen Zamba thing is that when I was in high school, I had read Marty Bell's book about where he followed different disciplines in the theater, like a producer, a director, a choreographer, and a performer. And the performer that he profiled was Karen Ziemba. And I remember reading the book and thinking, and just being so impressed with her discipline to her commitment to all the disciplines, you know, singing, dancing, acting, and how she was committed to being great at all of them. And I remember being really inspired by that. And it was kind of one of the first sparks of inspiration I had about maybe I'll do musical theater. And so when I met her and I was working with her, I said, you know, I read this book about you, and now, and at the time, you know, she was just trying to establish herself. And I'm like, and now you've got Tony nominations and people write shows for you. You know, Candor never wrote Steel Pier for you. Like, what's that like? And she was just like, it's great. it's,
as it should
it's
be.
awesome. But I've also worked really, really, really fucking hard.
Yeah,
And that really came through.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And just to be able to like allow moments like that make the carrot that we dangle in front of us just a
Mhm.
little more tasty, a little
Yeah,
more like, I'm
totally.
gonna try, like, it just makes it so much more worth fighting for.
The
Um,
full circle moments are
yeah.
incredible. I live for that.
Now, another icon that I don't know if you've worked with her or not, but I know on social media that you have an affinity for a goddess, a an amazing deity, a diva, the one and only Barbara Joan Streisand. What is ah?
This is what I use to prop my computer up when I'm doing Zoom calls. I have two of them.
Oh my God! Did you listen to the audiobook of it, by the way?
Of course, I read it and I listened to the audiobook. Yes.
The, it is gorgeous in all her Brooklyn intonation. I love it. Please talk about your love for Barbara Joan.
And I don't know if you know, but I had a podcast about Barbara.
No.
Yes, yes. It was really a labor of love, as you know, doing a podcast, but it was really fun. I had guests on and we discussed her work, and it really attracted a lot of attention, including some attention from, I can't say too much because I did sign an NDA, but and it's all over now. It's nothing's happening. But at the time, it attracted enough attention that some powerful people had reached out to me about the show, and
Wow.
but I did find, I was like, you know, that's a little too close for me. I like being a fan, but she's one of those people I don't ever want to meet because she is a goddess, and I
Yeah.
need her to stay that way. And I'm sure she'd be lovely if I met her, but like I would prefer to keep her on her perch
Right.
in
And you don't
Malibu.
want her to paint all of your microphones that off cream white that she did to Oprah.
I mean,
But
she can if she wants, but you
right.
know,
I actually had a question on here. Like, if you could go back in time and let's say you get promoted to waiter or even just as a host, like, do you think you'd want to serve her? Knowing all of her intricacies and all that, would that be an enjoyable experience? But I feel like you've already answered that question.
but there's a great story that when on the episode of the show that I did about Funny Girl, I had Rachel Schukert, who's an amazing writer and showrunner, come on, and she told a story about a server who had Barbara as a customer, and that she had sat down and ordered a margarita, and he panicked because they only had beer and wine at this restaurant. So he ran to the back and he was like, "Oh my God, Barbara wants some. Streisand's here. She wants a margarita. What do we do? What do we do?" And they were like, "Well, we can't do anything." So he went back to the table and said, I'm sorry, Miss Streisand, but we only have beer and wine." And she said, "I'm in a margarita pizza." So I mean, I would love to have been that later and just to have that story to tell, but I'll tell it secondhand because I think it's delightful.
And with her inflections too.
Hmm.
Just, I absolutely love that. And I adore all the Barbara Joy you bring on social media. So let's unpack your social media a little bit and how you, because you are someone that I feel seems to have your finger on the pulse of
Mm,
whatever seems to be trending, like whether it's blue sky, whether it's Instagram or whatever. Like I pretty much whatever you do, especially on blue sky, because I'm newer there as is everyone. It's like, all right, if you wear glasses, repost your stuff. Like whatever you do, I do because I'm like seems to be getting engagement. Like how do you manage like be at the beginning of trends on social media? How do you manage keeping it professional, keeping it silly, keeping it, as I said, in some cases you gotta keep it thirsty because you just need people
hmm.
to see your other content. Like I'm gonna post a thirsty shot so you can actually see my actor reel, and there we go.
Yeah,
So
sure.
how do you how do you balance that?
And it's supposed to be like at my advanced age, I do also feel like you gotta you gotta make sure that the kids don't forget that
Yeah.
you're still hot and you still can shake your thing, whatever
Well, and
that thing might be. Um,
just so everyone knows that what he's talking about is so the kids know. There was a request. There was a comment recently that was pretty intense. You posted a picture. The challenge was bicep, and somebody commented, "Throw me across the room." I swear to God, I almost dropped my margarita because I saw that on Monday. I think it was. That, what? How do you deal with that? How do you like not? That's ridiculous. How do you deal with that attention and how does that make you feel?
I mean, sometimes I feel like a fraud because I'm like, look, anybody can take a flattering photo,
Oh yeah,
and I mean, you can always put forth your best angle, and it's like maybe they think I'm hotter than I actually am. I mean, I know after all these years how to look good on a camera, right? On a lens. So I feel like it's like tricks of the trade almost.
yeah.
But that's smoke and mirrors. That's what show business is all about.
Amen.
Um, but I really loved Twitter in the heyday of Twitter. It was definitely my go-to because Instagram and Facebook and whatever else there is, it feels a little bit too, sometimes a little bit, it is very performative, but it's also performative for like your friends and family sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place to be thirsty. I mean, it can just get awkward when like Aunt Shelley is scrolling through your stories and likes your thirst trap, right? But with Twitter, what I loved about it in the early days is that it was mostly strangers and it was mostly people having a conversation. And I really like when you prompt and you respond and kind of like the back and forth of it all. And I'm glad that Blue Sky exists because it's been a good outlet since the mass Twitter exodus that happened in the
Yeah.
last few years. That's really the place where I thrive because I like to think I'm anonymous, even though I'm clearly not. But I like to think because most people I don't know who they are, so it's like strangers, and it's easier to be vulnerable and put yourself out there to strangers, I think, than people who know you.
Well, yeah, because you can't in your head imagine Aunt Shelley seeing that. You can't imagine, you can imagine the people you know reacting like, there's Jamie being thirsty, or there's Jamie. And so with people you're always thinking like, they're going to judge me. But with strangers, it's like, well, I'm getting requests to throw them across the room. And as soon as I can monetize that, I will. Um, we got a vacation to pay for. But that is I am not as good as you as far as keeping things always that separate. I'm pretty much out of the thirst game, which is thank fucking God, because that was a life. When I was single, I was parched. I was parched. Like it was, but so much so that like I would post things like statuses on Facebook as if it were Twitter, and I don't
Oh,
regret anything I posted. But I
hmm.
always I just thought I'd put it in a way that like if you know type
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
But then like my mom, my tia Evie, my dad would like react to it. And I was like, what the fuck? Like
Oh, yeah. I
you
forgot they're watching. Yeah,
you
it's
should
true.
not know what that term means. And why
Yeah.
do you like, because obviously their life began with me, even at my advanced age of 105. Um, So it's really it's a fun environment, and I just want to tip my hat to you for doing it
Thank you.
oh so
And
well.
it's also good because like Anne Shelley has no idea what blue sky even is. So like she's never gonna find that.
She's like, that was that
So
show that got canceled on ABC in Montana. Like, yes, that's the one. Um,
exactly.
Now, as we're kind of like wrapping up, we got through so much and so many things that I still did not touch. Oh, we didn't touch. Ah, fuck it. We'll go a little longer. I want to talk about Dreamgirls.
Oh
If
yes,
we can go longer, do you have like
of
10 more
course. Oh
minutes? Yeah.
yes, yes. It's either this or blue sky.
There,
So
there we go. Sorry to keep
yes,
you from your audience.
they'll be fine. They'll still be there.
Thirsting and thirsting.
Mhm.
So my talking about getting your first job in New York City and getting your card. As soon as I moved to New York, almost as soon, I booked a job at the Westchester Broadway Theater,
Oh
which
yes.
yeah, that was the job, and I got my equity card, and I didn't
Mhm.
quite understand how amazing it was because you're working with. I knew that there were people. I'm the worst musical theater person as far as like knowing who people are all the time. Um,
Uh-huh.
but you're working with vets and like
Yeah. Oh,
you're this
for sure.
brand new kid to the city and you're working with people who have been in the original company of everything in the 80s 70s and before, and you
Mhm.
just don't know. And so I was in Jekyll and Hyde, directed by Robert Puccioli, and
Amazing.
I managed to get like one of the board of governors. I'm like, oh, I'm like a featured person, so that's cool. Everyone else is like a Broadway vet, and I'm like not knowing who it was, and I being the homosexual that I am and was, with everything Dreamgirls, everything Dreamgirls. Oh
Uh-huh.
my God. This was before, no, this was after the movie, but like I have been a devotee forever to where musical directors in the past have gotten me like bootlegs from like that they like found in the trunk. Like, oh, I have this bootleg from the 80s if you want it. I'm like, oh, I'll keep it. Um, but so I'd always like make Dreamgirl references as just like part of my vernacular, and we're
Sure.
doing the facade opening. Oh, I can't remember how that show goes. Anyways, but we're doing it. And it's almost like a tech thing to like we start the staging and then it's, okay, take it back, da, da, da. And then right before the board of governors walks out to do their part, I make a thing. I say, oh, from the top, Laurel, and Donald turns to Paul, and this Donald was this very sassy older gay man with dry, and he goes, Paul, are you gonna tell him or should I? And Paul just smiles at me. He goes, I was the original Cadillac Carboy. And as soon as he said Cadillac Carboy, there was like that's when the music started, and I was like, the facade. I could not get through that rehearsal, and I geeked out. I am obsessed with that show, and I love that it's on your resume. And like, what was the experience of being in such an iconic show to pretty much you're in a role that gets to just watch every night the
Mhm.
magnificence that who was your Effie?
My Effie was our original Effie dropped out. I remember we had kind of a name, Effie, and she had to leave the last minute. And so she was replaced by her understudy, who was amazing. Her name is Dominique. I cannot remember. Kent? I'm so sorry, Dominique. I forgot your last name. Even though we're still friends and follow each other on Instagram.
Not
Um,
anymore.
I know, seriously. Oh, that's the end of that. Well, it was fun while it lasted. She's on tour with Waitress right now. She's
Oh, good for her.
yeah, she's playing the one of the waitresses.
Yeah.
um, who sings the low harmony. That's what I think of it. The low harmony waitress.
Yes.
Uh, she the I was really surprised actually in general when I moved to LA that there was theater here because I worked in like equity theater in Los Angeles when I got here, and I was really surprised that that was like something you could do, like the equity theater and intimate theater. There was like quite a bit, and that was one of the bigger shows that I did. And what was cool is that it was directed by he wasn't in the original cast, but he was part of the original um, production. He was a replacement, so he'd worked with Michael Bennett, and he did all of the staging. He did the exact Michael Bennett staging and
Wow.
choreography, and that was thrilling to be able to do it as it had been done. And Dreamgirls is one of my favorite shows of all time. I never thought I'd be in Dreamgirls, but apparently there are four white guys. There's the Cadillac car guy, and then there's these like guys who play like the evil record producers and the payola DJs and stuff. So we got to like be the villains of the piece, which was great. It was really fun. But just to be inside the world of Dreamgirls was, oh my God, the best experience.
Yeah,
So fun.
because I mean, everybody knows, and I'm telling you, everyone knows I'm changing, but there's so much good music, and just like
So
be
much. Every song's a banger.
bathed in that wall of sound. And like
Mhm.
one of my favorite ones is that, like, I'm so pissed it got cut from the movie, is This Ain't No Party.
Oh, great. Great.
It's phenomenal. It is, and I just love. I mean, I geeked out in the same way where I geeked out when I found out Paul was the original Cadillac Carboy. When I
Yeah.
saw that in your bio, I was like, "Oh my god, we need to unpack this." So thank you for scratching my gay itch
Oh, of
and tickling that
course.
spot for me. Because 2 weeks ago we
Essential.
had an Effie on, and I just I can talk about that show all day. But before I let you go, I want to talk about something a little serious. I mean, yeah, it is kind of serious, but just something so that way the listeners know that I'm just not complaining on here when I'm talking about things going on in the industry and
Yeah.
what's been happening in LA since I moved here. You know, I moved here at the beginning of the strike, and at first I was like, well, that's not a great time, except for that, like, maybe I can settle in, and by the time it's over, I'll know what's what, which I'm still unpacking LA and all the 25,000 cities that are just stapled together, calling itself one.
Right.
But
So true.
the impact of the strike initially, when I was looking for jobs, when I got jobs, and it's like, well, nobody's coming out to restaurants anymore. Like, it's not. There was a huge dip, and then my agent telling me like, hey, just buckle up, it's going to be a long road to recovery, and like, you're going to need to ingratiate yourself with these theater companies that already have their circles, so you're just going to need to keep showing up so they know you. And the
Right.
industry is going through stuff, and here we are almost 2 years later, and we're still recovering. So can you unpack for our listeners just like the strike, what it was about, what it was like being in it, and what it's been like recovering, and what the road to recovery looks like?
One of the great things about the strike was just, of course, the solidarity that you felt and going to the site every day. I didn't go every day, but I went at least once a week, usually multiple times a week. I had friends who were captains, strike captains, and who were there every day. But you would go and you would march alongside really famous people and your fellow kind of like bread and butter actors, and everybody was kind of in it together, and the writers were there too. And it really felt like we were advocating for a big change. And then when we were successful in the negotiations, it felt like such a triumph.
Mm-hmm.
And what also happened is that right after the strike, like a few weeks after the strike, I got a TV gig, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. We're back. This was all worth it. We didn't do anything for the last whatever 6 months, but now we got what we wanted. I'm working. I'm taking selfies in my trailer, thinking like everything's going to be just fine. And then a year went by with nothing. And I'm looking around and everyone's kind of experienced the same thing, like this crazy slowdown that is obviously the direct result of the strike, that we just didn't really understand the implications of that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until January when I booked a commercial. That was the first job I had booked since the TV job a year before. And that was probably the longest stretch I've ever gone without working.
Yeah.
I did like a reading and like a little side thing here and there, but otherwise it was just a ghost town.
Yeah.
And and then I also found out that I was cut from the commercial. So that's also great
But the pay
news.
went through. The pay went through.
Like not directly related to the strike, but when my agent called to say like you've been cut from the commercial, so no residuals. um, I remember what she said was, everyone's just trying to save money,
Yeah.
any way they can. So they hired you for this gig, but they don't want to. They're going to buy you out because they don't want to have to pay you residuals. So that's a downstream effect as well. But the thing about show business in general is that it ebbs and flows, and there are even times when you things might be slow, but you're working a lot, and vice versa. Everything's going great, but for some reason it's not hitting you. And I've learned after all of these many years that you kind of have to ride the waves
Yeah,
and not get too discouraged and want to quit. Because that's usually my first thing. Well, then I quit. I'm out of here. But I don't think
exactly.
that's a good solution.
Yeah, it's not, and I'm glad you don't give up, because from what limited I've witnessed of you, and what I can read from what you've accomplished, you are very talented and
You
should
make me
stay in
feel
the
so
game.
good about myself.
Oh,
We gotta do this every day. Let's do a podcast every day.
of course, let's do it, right?
Just
The
talk about
Jamie
fabulous.
Project. No, but it is true. And like, this is, another part of this podcast is, for the people, whether you're still working in hospitality, whether you've worked in hospitality, in entertainment, we get beaten down
Mm-hmm.
so regularly, and just like question our life choices and have things just thrown at us. So it is my pleasure and kind of like my obligation. I feel like part of what I'm supposed to do is to uplift people, to cheer them on, and show them that that side of themselves. And with that being said, I mentioned earlier, not every shift should be a tough shift, and I think when there is good news to be said, then that's good news that should be shared, right? Because we all know
Right,
bad news gets a
right.
lot more airtime. So
Mhm.
in your multiple careers, in the multiple cities you've worked in, and all the things you've done, whether it's hospitality, performing, in school, wherever, working with Karen Ziemba, who is somebody that has made a tough shift a little easier for you along the way, that you would like to just call out here today, and give them a shout out for this episode?
I think the unsung heroes of theater are the stage managers.
Mm.
Um, I think that because they're in our union, right? But their kind of needs, I think, get forgotten sometimes. But I have been in so many shows where like I'm having a tough time because maybe I don't like my track, or I don't get along with somebody, or I'm injured. And usually it's the stage manager who I can turn to who will give me the support and kind of the recognition that you need. So I want to call out every stage manager I've ever done. In fact, when I did Dreamgirls, I worked with a stage manager that I had worked with on my very first equity show when I was still like an EMC candidate. And when I did that, I remember I was late a couple times to the theater, and he like reprimanded me, you're late. And when we worked together in Dreamgirls, he didn't remember me. But one thing he said to me during the run, he's like, "You're always very punctual. Good job." And I was like, "Because of you." I learned that from you because you terrified me, but in a good way. So
Yeah,
I want to shout out the stage managers because I think they're the unsung heroes of our industry.
there we go. Well, there you have it. Are you a stage manager? Then this show has been for you. We thank you for all that you do. And I say this every time, but it could not be any more true, or truer than right now in this moment. The world clearly needs more people like you. So to all the stage managers, thank you for all that you do to make our shifts easier.
Amen.
This has been another episode of Tough Shift. And just remember, tough shifts build character, and
Mhm.
character is what brings your story to life. Take care. Tough Shift was created and hosted by Sean Patrick Murtagh. It was recorded on Riverside and distributed with Buzzsprout. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and maybe a comment or two. And remember, tough shifts build character, and character is what brings your story to life.